Dr. Sid Yakson of the Akan people is here because he's an expert on the Hebraic traditions in Africa, and I work a great deal with Ewe people. That's their name. The Ewe were the Ewe before Germans came and mispronounced their name as well. And so I want to, if you don't, in order to understand Hebrews in Africa, you need to understand the term Ewe, and I don't have time to explain that, but I do want to speak a little bit about ancestors and also my family story, because my last name is Alston. That was one of the 10 largest slaveholding families in United States history. There's a book about our family, a documentary. Now Reverend Mackie Alston, who's from the white Alstons, who did that book and documentary, has left Auburn Seminary to work on a reparations documentary. So I know, and I say this with all humbleness, Professor from South Carolina? Yeah. You're an Alston. You look like an Alston. More than me, actually, when I look at him, more than me. But this is the second time I've been on a panel, and a family member was there, so we have to talk after, actually. There's Alstons everywhere because of that. But A-L-S-T-O-N. So what I know from my branch of the Alstons, because we have the association where a lot of the elders meet, because there's what the white side is doing, and then there's also going to be a documentary from some of the black Alstons, is that some of us did come from Nigeria. And some of us, my branch was not here. Previously as Aboriginal people, we came on the slave ships, and I've been welcomed back to Nigeria. My cousin, who's an Ifa priestess, went to Nigeria almost exactly a year to the date before I did. And a lot of times, I think with our Afrophobia is that we are quick to make judgments about the spirituality that calls to various Africans. One thing I love about dealing with Africa is they acknowledge that we are a tribal people. We're not all the same. We're not going to all worship the same. I studied all religions before I became a Christian at 14. And then I looked into Kemetic science. I was invited to be an initiate of Shango before, while I was examining the Hebrew faith. My cousin is very proficient as an Ifa priestess, and even found out more about our family when she went there. Many times we say we're not using the European mind, but even in how we interpret the spiritual decisions that people in the diaspora make, we're still using the European mind. It's not only colonialism that some tribes are saying they have Hebraic ancestry. There's Kipa Vita. The reason why Congo people are Christian is because Kipa Vita, a young black woman who was initiated as a priestess to the nation. There was 2 types of priests in the Congo Empire. One was to the individual, one was to the nation. She was initiated as a priestess to the nation. She became a Christian, and she started to preach a black Christ, black saints, that the people of the Congo were the chosen people. She was burned at the stake. Her bones were ground to a dust, and then her people were sold to Brazil, already believing in a black Jesus. Bless his soul, he was my professor, but hundreds of years before Dr. James Cone said God is black and Jesus is black, and if God is white, kill God. Kimpa Vita, a young black woman of her own, made this decision and was totally obliterated for it. So I just want to be mindful that as we're talking about this, the 400 years doesn't make or break me, because I don't have anything prophetic hinging on that. I was working for my people before the 400 years. Manbo can attest to that. I'll be working after. But if this is in the imaginations of the people, we got to be able to take this conversation outside of this room to the average person in a way that's not patronizing. Because the truth is, we were at the helm of most of the major spiritual systems. If we are aboriginal to everywhere, then we must be aboriginal to most of these systems. And sometimes I feel, if even when African people come forward and say certain things are their traditions, it's still, well, a missionary gave you that, a colonialist gave you that. And for me, I am very dedicated to what the ancestors went through. And even in saying we were here before 1619, I know among younger people, my age bracket, some people are taking that information to say there were no slave ships. And for me, I feel the ancestors boil up when you don't say that. When you say that. because there were people who came. And some of them came as Christians, some of them came as Muslim royalty, some of them came as Ifa. But they came, and I think we need to be mindful of just how we're giving the whole story. Yes, I know for a fact that there were people sailing to America before Columbus. But I also know that many of us came on the ships, and I just want to make sure we're not, especially for younger people who's running with this Aboriginal thing to the point of disrespecting the ancestors. I want to make sure we're clear about that. And it was actually a black rep who put HR 1242 up, so we can have a discussion around what role do our people play when they have places of power. I used to do organizing around political figures, so if we don't trust HR 1242, let's just be mindful that a black man put it up there. So what's our role, not only as spiritual leaders, but as political leaders as well? So I just wanted to lift those things up, because I think sometimes, even in these spaces, we can get into a European hierarchy of this is higher than this is higher than that. But I know people with internalized depression who even practice traditional religions, but they don't like dark-skinned people. I always say, if you want to practice a tradition based on Ifa, but you don't respect how a Yoruba person looks, and you would die if you woke up looking like a Yoruba person, then you want my African spirit, but you don't want me. Even though I'm a Hebrew, I love Africa. I took the Harvard implicit bias test. I have a bias towards darker skin. I think these are some of the things we need to examine, because we can say we're liberating ourselves, and we love the traditions, but we don't love the people connected to the traditions. So for me, whether it's 400 years or 1,000 years or 2,000 years, what are we doing to truly respect the root of where we came from? Because what I'm seeing, even with the traditional religions, is that even white people are encroaching on that. And I'm a Hebrew, and I've had to tell some white people, back up off of Ifa. You need to calm down. And I've told them. I just got in an argument with a white professor at Columbia who had so much to say about the tradition in Brazil, and African Americans didn't keep it. Now, if you're from South Carolina, you know about hoodoo. Okay, my grandmother used to take trips, and then all the family problems get solved. Now she forgot about the trip. But so, I just think whatever tradition you're in, I just have a question for the audience. In looking at these past 400 or 500 years, something happened to us as a people. Right. And so how did we get here? Does your tradition have an answer for how we got here? Because when I read the slave narratives, even confessions from Nigerians whose family owned slaves, I read a confession in the New Yorker, they weren't Christian, they were traditionalists. So we really have to examine, how did we get here so we don't stay here for the next whatever 100 years.